The original System Shock is widely considered a gaming classic. Created by Looking Glass Studios, System Shock was a science fiction successor to Looking Glass's Ultima Underworld games. In 1994, the game's 3D engine, physics simulation, and complex gameplay were groundbreaking and had a significant impact on the first-person shooter genre. Critically acclaimed, these games are considered major breakthroughs that established their own subgenre known as the immersive sim. Since its release, System Shock has been included in multiple Hall of Fame lists and has spawned many famous spiritual successors, such as Deus Ex, BioShock, and 2017's Prey. However, many gamers today, myself included, have never played the original game. By today's standards, System Shock is considered slow-paced, clunky, and severely dated. This is where Night Dive Studios comes in. Known for their work in remaking, remastering, and reviving classic games, Night Dive Studios has been working on a reboot for System Shock for the past 7 years. Despite delays, a hiatus on the project by the team, and even an engine switch, System Shock is finally set to be released this March. However, there is no hard date yet, so take that with a grain of salt. In this video, I will be diving into the demo to share my first impressions of this classic reboot. As someone who has never played the original game, I can offer you an unbiased opinion, free from nostalgia. So first, let's take a look at the aspects of the demo that I really enjoyed and I felt were well done. The game greets us with a Blade Runner-like cinematic from the perspective of a drone.
Genetic and pharmacological research.
We are then taken to the explorable room of the hacker, our playable character.
It's more than just a great professional environment. As a corporation, SaltyOctopus has given me a place where I can feel safe and comfortable. All of my needs are taken care of under one great big roof. I feel like I'm part of a family.
The hacker is arrested and subsequently hired by Edward Diego to perform some questionable activities.
This is Shodan, the station's AI. She controls just about every system on Citadel Station. I need you to remove the ethical restraints. They've been a bit of an issue of late.
In the original game, all of this was presented in an opening cutscene, so I appreciated the cinematic approach to this game's world. As we awaken in the medical bay, we find ourselves in a dark and moody cyberpunk environment with metallic and neon textures. The game's aesthetics were very pleasing, and the lighting was on point. I also appreciated the fact that while the game initially appeared modern, a closer look at objects and walls revealed pixelated textures. This was a subtle effect that grounded the entire game in the old school vibe it was paying homage to, and I thought that was a great touch. As someone who knew little about the original System Shock, I was not prepared for this game's tense and almost horror-like atmosphere. Despite its stylized appearance, the game manages to create a feeling of tension with its maze-like corridors and moody lighting. It reminded me of playing games such as Doom 3 or Alien Isolation. I was immediately drawn into the world thanks to the tense gameplay, immersive animations for the hacker, and the story being conveyed through audio logs with impressive and believable voice acting.
Another clue today. Carl reported Keith and his group are dead.
I liked how the game was full of items that I could pick up and read about, and while many of them were nothing more than fodder for the recycler, it made the world feel very tangible. Speaking of the recycler, I thought it was a great mechanic. Throughout the game, you collect random items from the environment, and this machine will recycle them down into credits that can then be used in vending machines to purchase medkits, ammo, weapon upgrades, food, etc. This system was apparently something that was in the original System Shock 2, and I like that they added it to this game because it fits well. Cyberspace is also an interesting aspect of this game. The goal is to defeat security protocols to access previously restricted areas of the space station. I thought that it was a cool concept for breaking up the gameplay, as Cyberspace played more like a fast-paced arcade game rather than the tense, suspenseful gameplay of the main game. I also thought the Tron-like art style was a good approach, and when doing research on the original title, I feel the developers did 1994's Cyberspace justice. I personally thought this approach was far better than the door puzzles, for example. I'm not a huge fan of these types of no-direction guessing game puzzles, and in my opinion, the Cyberspace minigame is a much more immersive approach, and I found myself wishing there was more of it in this demo. The last aspect that I found interesting was that unlike most games that have an overall difficulty setting, System Shock allows you to adjust the difficulty of many different aspects of the game. This allows the player to tailor the game to their preferences based upon the aspects of the game they may find too challenging or too easy. Now let's talk about the things that I felt could be improved upon. The game has a contemporary shooter feel with familiar controls and a streamlined HUD, despite the vast amount of information being displayed. However, shooting seems to be a secondary thought as the game's suspense and exploration offer the primary gameplay draw. Because of this, I did find the weapons lacking a punchy impact, and the enemies were too easy to take down in my opinion. Additionally, the melee combat feels a bit clunky, and the jerky camera movement when swinging can be disorienting. It would have been helpful to have a sound effect cue to indicate when an attack lands, as it can be difficult to tell if you're hitting your target, unless of course you explode their head. I think it would have been beneficial to add a push or block mechanic to the game, as getting close to enemies in melee combat often results in unavoidable damage. This would have made the melee combat more viable, especially since ammunition can be depleted quickly if you're not careful. Shooting the cameras is an important part of the game, as every camera you destroy lowers the level of security. Apparently, in the second System Shock, destroying cameras would alert enemies, but in this game it does not. I felt like it should have been added to this game to increase the danger and allow for some more firefights. The enemy AI is less than stellar. There were instances where enemies should have seen or heard me but didn't, and sometimes it seemed like my shots didn't register. And sure, while these enemies are mindless zombies or cyborg slaves, I still feel like my immersion was broken at times fighting these guys because of the dumb AI. I don't know how the AI behaved in the 1994 version, but a better AI system in place for this modern reboot would have significantly increased my opinion on this demo. There were a handful of bugs and things that could use some polish in this demo, but nothing that was too game-breaking. The ragdolls were rather bouncy, and the dead enemies would often continue to twitch around long after being dispatched. I noticed a clipping error with the hacker's legs in this animation, and at one point I stood on a table and it slingshotted my character a few feet away, but unfortunately I did not get a recording of it. Overall, the game played very smoothly, and I maintained good frames throughout my playthrough. Because I did not play the original game, I cannot tell you if this remake will live up to the expectations. However, as someone who has played both BioShock and Prey, I do think that this game will be able to bring a solid experience to fans of the immersive sim genre. And while there are still some things to tweak and polish, it's clear that Night Dive Studios has worked very hard to deliver a solid game to the fanbase, at least as far as the demo is concerned. And while this type of game plays a little slower than titles I usually go for, I found myself really enjoying it. I for one will be keeping an eye on the release of System Shock and watching the Steam reviews. I am rooting for Night Dive on this one, as this game has been in development for so long. I am sure they have a ton riding on its success. The demo was good, and I'm hopeful that the rest of the game will be too. Hopefully, with Night Dive's track record of being the remaster masters, we will continue to see more amazing titles rebooted from this studio in the coming years. So yeah, I guess now I'm gonna have to go out and play the original System Shock since I missed a classic growing up. Once I've done that, caught up on my gaming backlog, I'll most likely pick up this reboot and do another review that compares it to the original.
You are not welcomed here. Remove yourself.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at the System Shock demo. Have you played it yet? If so, please let me know your opinions in the comments below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as we're just getting started on this channel. I'm SaltyOctopus, and I will see you next time.